COVID-19 pandemic sent shockwaves through global supply chains for almost everything Canada currently imports. Now, some of the issues have resolved themselves over time, but some still exist today. And in response to supply chain hurdles, some sectors have sought to reshore their production. This means that they're bringing manufacturing back to Canada. Now, while this can certainly be good in the context of streamlining supply chains, it does raise some questions in terms of consumer costs. Now, this especially if reshoring will result in higher prices, given that Canada is generally a more expensive country to produce in compared to other countries in Asia. Well, joining us now to discuss the concept of reshoring is Brendan Caldwell, Director at Caldwell Securities Ltd. Brendan, welcome back.
Thank you, Nima.
So can you give us more insight into why companies are deciding to move their production back to North America, Brendan?
The short answer is, Nima, because they kind of have to. The global supply chains that have been expanding throughout my entire life have become narrowed and obstacle-filled and just difficult. So in a world where we saw democracy spreading, economic prosperity spreading, and trade spreading, it made sense to have production in wherever the lowest cost venue was, assuming that the shipping costs bordered on reasonable. Now, it doesn't matter where the lowest price manufacturing country is if you can't actually get the goods. And it's also a future shock world. Everything's happening a lot more quickly. So when it comes to fashion technology, actually being able to get the goods on a timely basis, that's mattering as well. So it's a bit of an odd reversals to what we have witnessed, or I've witnessed, for the last half century.
Definitely a reversal of some sorts, Brendan. Now, there seems to be a big shift in apparel companies reshoring in particular. So why might this industry specifically want to have production closer to home?
Well, again, a lot of some of the basic reasons, like we just discussed, that there isn't the reliable supply chains that there once were. But also, fashion is accelerating. It's no longer just the spring and fall shows, Milan, darling, to borrow from The Incredibles. Fashion happens as quick as TikTok. So if you're talking about a white shirt's a white shirt's a white shirt. But if it's the new thing, the new look, the new whatever, it doesn't do any good to put the order out to China or wherever if it's going to take 6 months, and by that point the trend has passed. So apparel in particular is being impacted by this TikTok trend.
All right, Brendan. Now, with every business move comes potential risks. So what are some of the pros and cons of companies reshoring?
Well, the actual doing of it. And I think the real risk for Canada, I think this is going to be really important for our leaders to get their brains around, is this thing called friendshoring. Because I think you said in your introduction, we're a pretty expensive place to make things if we're just making it for ourselves. Relative to most other countries, including the one south of us, there ain't very many of us. But if the Canada, Mexico, US trade agreement actually means anything, having production in Canada should be the same as the US, should be the same as Mexico, if we keep those borders open. So having good relations with the politicians in the United States so that we can make things for the US market, that's going to be a really, really key hurdle for Canadian politicians to get over.
And another key thing to consider when it comes to reshoring, Brendan, is would consumers be willing to pay these higher costs involved with local production?
It's a tricky one. It makes the consumer sound, what's the word, bougie. Whether they will they pay or won't they pay? It is unfortunate circumstance. This reshoring is just one of the factors that is going into these higher inflation numbers we're seeing in, really globally. If you can't actually get the thing made in the cheapest place, then it's going to be made in a more expensive place, and that's going to cause the price to go up. So it is a contributing factor. But the question is, are consumers willing to pay? They may stop paying for discretionary items, but for basics, it is going to be a necessity to be able. It's better, put it this way, it's better to buy the more expensive product that you can get than the cheaper one that maybe was delivered in 6 months or a year or never. So this reshoring thing may actually be an inevitability, that changes the way goods and are priced for the foreseeable future.
Sounds like supply and demand. Brendan, always great having you on Forum Daily. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, Nima.
Stay locked into Forum Daily as we unpack the biggest stories making headlines around the world. Up next, as the Ukrainian president has vowed harsh retaliation after a Russian missile attack. Stay with us.